Hi, welcome back to the channel. Michelle, and today I'm going to be sharing what I've been reading so far for the month of June. I will link up above my what I've been reading playlist where I just share, usually monthly, the books I've been reading and share a little bit about those books. So as always, I will put the titles of the books down in the description box below. I'm not going to link anything. Check out your library, check out thrift books. You don't necessarily have to go to Amazon for everything, so I will make sure to include the titles at least. So I'm going to start with the books I don't have physical copies for because some of them are due back at the library. I do really like to use my library as a resource for reading just because I read a ton of books and I don't have the space to keep all of the books. So the first one I'm going to talk about is I Left the House Today. This is something my daughter actually requested from the library, and it looks so interesting. I read it. It's funny because when I was talking to the librarian, when she was checking the book in, because it came from a different library, she's like, it wasn't really cool. I started reading it too. So it's got pictures in it and kind of hand-drawn pictures of just everyday life stuff, and it's just really funny, and I really enjoyed a lot of the pictures of like just everyday stuff. And my favorite was when they're, her and her partner are discussing their double chins. As you get older, that just, naturally happens. And they're both looking at each other. And I'm like, oh my God, that's hilarious. Because my husband and I recently had a conversation about how we're both developing the double chin now that we're getting older. So it's just really funny and uplifting, and it's really quick to read. So I would recommend that one. The next one would be Once There Was. And this was a book club at my library that we chose. This is the book that was chosen, and it was really good. It's about mythical creatures and magic. So this girl finds out her dad has been murdered. Her dad was a veterinarian. I believe she's like 16, and she inherits his vet business, and she starts to learn that he treated, magical, mythical creatures before, and she's introduced to this magical world. And there's a lot of really cool themes to it about, it goes a lot deeper than I think, a middle grade novel would necessarily go. It touches on, identity, humanity, the connection between nature and humans, spirituality. All these things are touched upon in this book, and it does really get into different creatures, and she has to kind of figure out how she can help these magical creatures because, like her father, she has a gift as well, but she doesn't know what that gift is. Her father never shared that part of his life with her. It was always a secret. And she also notices something is off with her, and she kind of goes through this, magical journey to figure out these things. And you are introduced to these different creatures. Some of them are really dark, and it was really an interesting read. So I highly suggest that one. I really enjoyed it. So next, I'm going to flip the camera around because the rest I do have physical copies for, because a lot of them I actually own. But I'm going to turn you around and show you what else I've been reading. So the first things I'm going to share are the romance books I've been reading. I recently made a video talking about Julia Quinn and how I finished that entire series. And now I've moved on to this series. And there's multiple series within them. This is the Ravenel's books. I have all of them because, again, they were pretty cheap through thrift books. But I'll quickly try to go through one by one. So this is Cold-Hearted Rake, and what I really like about these series is that, much like the Julia Quinn books, the characters are extended throughout the other books, but I would say in these books, the characters play a more prominent role in each of these books. Julia Quinn, you maybe saw the other characters in a scene or two. This, they play an integral role in each of these books, which I really like it because by the time you reach, the end of this particular book series, you really know the characters well and you're really invested in their story. So I really did enjoy this series. So this starts the series off. It's about Devin and his brother Wes and Kathleen. So Devin inherits property because he's the closest living male relative, and Kathleen is the widow. She was married to the man who originally had the property. He died. And Wes is Devin's brother. And of course, Wes and Devin are not interested in the property at all. They're not interested in the title. They just want to sell the property. And Kathleen is young and strong-willed. And it kind of goes through their story of their relationship and how they come together. Really enjoyed that one. Next was Marrying Winterborne, which again is a continuation. So this was about Kathleen and Devin. This one is about Rise, Winterborne, and Helen. So Kathleen was a widow, like I said before, but she also had sisters through marriage. And this is the story of one of the sisters. Helen is the oldest sister, marrying Winterborne. Winterborne is a self-made man. He's not titled. He's not, prominently in society. He made all of his money the old-fashioned way. And I gotta say, this has been one of my favorite books. This is probably up there with The Sum of His Kisses, which is one of my favorites from Julia Quinn. This one would be probably my second. I think it was really well done. So Helen is this more, I would say, shy character, and Rise Winterborne is obviously a very dominating character. He's used to getting what he wants. He's very rich. He's trying to break into society. So he wants to marry someone that has a title so he can break into society. And the dynamics between them, I think, is really interesting. But what I think is really interesting, what I really like about this book is a lot of romance books bring in, different Scottish or Welsh or these different male characters. And he speaks Welsh throughout the book, which most of the time in romantic books, I don't like when they have the weird accents. I think it just comes off cheesy, but I think she does in a way that makes it just enough, like little endearments in Welsh are really interesting. And I think in this one, even in back, it goes over the different phrases used. Because in some of the other books I read, I had to Google the phrase because I'm like, what are they saying? But I really like that was included in the back. And she also does include recipes in the back. But this is a really interesting story. I really enjoyed this one. Next would be Devil in Spring. Now this one is, again, a continuation. So this was Helen, the oldest sister. This is the next sister. Pandora and Cassandra are twins. Pandora is neurodiverse. I love that. She's quirky. She says whatever she wants. She's full of energy. It was really interesting to see that. And she kind of accidentally ends up marrying, she kind of accidentally finds herself in a situation where she's alone with a guy. People see it, so they have to get married. Lord St. Vincent. And it's just really interesting to see the different characters come together, because one thing that she doesn't want to do is she doesn't want to get married. She has her own dreams, her ideas. She wants to create game boards, and with Winterborne's help, she's selling them at his store. So she has all these plans, and she doesn't want to get married, but she finds herself in this situation, which often is in society, that a woman was put in, that if she was alone with a man for a certain amount of time, her reputation was ruined. So everyone tells her she has to marry Lord St. Vincent, but she doesn't want to, and she actively resists his advances and things like that. And I just really like at the end of this how a compromise is reached, and there's love between them, and it's an understanding, not just a forced type marriage. But this one was really good. Next would be Hello Stranger. So no, this is not a family member in this. This is the female doctor, Dr. Garrett Gibson. And again, you're introduced to these characters throughout the books. It's just you get more detailed of their specific story. And this is her story as the only female doctor. And I really do like the kind of medical aspect of this, that I can tell the author did some research into the medical practices of the time. And her love interest in this is Ethan Ransom, who is a kind of like a private detective or a spy type thing, and their relationship back and forth. And again, I love that these stories are about accepting each other for who they are and not trying to change them. So I really enjoyed that. That was a fast-paced read. So next is Devil's Daughter. Now this is Wes's story. So Wes, if you remember from the first one, was Devon's brother. And again, Wes is throughout all these books, and he's such a lovable character that I was really excited to, read his love story. So he actually, his love interest is Lord St. Vincent's sister. So Phoebe is a widow in this as well. Again, I hate the cheesy covers for these books. One of the things I like about the redone Julia Quinn books is they're not so cheesy. I hate the covers and the sides of these books, but I really enjoy the story, so I just have to get over it. But they are super, 90s cheesy romance novel looking. But this is about Phoebe. She has 2 kids. Her husband died. She loved him, her entire life. They grew up together type situation. And Wes isn't interested in, falling in love or any of those things. So kind of their story. What I specifically like about this one, which I didn't really get in any of the Julie Quinn books I read, is that it's a family type atmosphere. So she has 2 young children. How does that navigate with a romance story? And also the romance behind another person entering your family and accepting that family as their own. So I really did enjoy Wes's story. Next would be Chasing Cassandra. Again, this was a continuation. This is Lady Pandora's sister, so they are twins, and this is her story. Again, she wants to fall in love like her sister did. She's starting to feel like everyone around her is in love, and she's not. And her love interest is Severin. Again, he's introduced throughout these books as well, so you already know the characters prior to reading, which I really like. And I love Tom Severin's character. He is also neurodiverse. He's really, really smart. He's really into math. Some of his like dirty talk through the book is mathematically related, which I just love. I love really intelligent men. I love when they're written quirky like that. Not, you know, the typical really strong, beautiful man, but like the quirky, dorky kind of one, I really love. So Tom Severin was an awesome character. And it's funny because throughout the other books, you're kind of given a really negative view of his character, but through this, you kind of understand his character better, and that he's not, you know, intentionally trying to be rude to people. That's just kind of how his brain works. Again, the neurodiversity coming in there. But one of my favorite stories as well was their story. So the last one in the series was Devil in Disguise. Again, this would probably be one of my least favorites. So this is about Meryl, and again, she's introduced, she's Phoebe's friend in here. She's introduced throughout the other books a little bit, but I wasn't a big fan of the story. And again, her love interest is a Scotsman, so Meryl inherited her husband's shipping company after he died, and Keir is shipping whiskey because he's a Scotsman. He's shipping whiskey in. And that's kind of how they meet. And again, it's a cute story. He loses his memory. There's an accident. He doesn't remember who she is. But I just wasn't a big fan. It didn't really seem like a lot of the story was a problem. They were, you know, just fighting back and forth between wanting to be with each other, but it wasn't this big obstacle they had to come over. So it wasn't my favorite. And again, the obsession with Scottish, again, I have another book in my pile that has a Scottish man in it. The Scottish accent and emphasis was, I think, a little overdone in this. Again, that's just personal preference, but it came off a bit cheesy. And there were times when I had to actually look up what he was saying because, you know, I don't know that language. So I get the appeal. You know, I've watched Outlander. I understand the appeal of a Scottish man, but it was just a little too obviously written for me. So that was that series. Next, I will continue with more romance novels. So I've been reading Evie Dunmore. I talked about that in the last what I've been reading series. So I got the other 2. So the first one is A Rogue of Their Own, and this is Lady Lucy, and again, you're introduced to the character in the previous one as well. And this one is about, you know, she's a suffragist. She doesn't want to get married. She's tempted by Tristan, who she's known a lot of her life, and they come together. Now, what I like about these romance novels is they're very modern. They're very different than traditional romance novels you're going to see. They're, you know, talking about the same time periods, but these books are talking more specifically about issues, you know, women's rights during this, how marriage can in some ways be a trap. And what I really enjoyed about this one is Lucy never wanted to get married. Tristan, towards the end, they come into a situation where they kind of need to get married or have to get married to save each other's reputation. But she doesn't want to, so I'm not going to ruin the end, but he compromises, which I really appreciate that the author kind of talking about that. Yes, especially during this time period, marriage can absolutely be a trap. Women lose their rights, they lose their property. The man in the situation is willing to compromise and meet her, you know, where she's at. So I enjoyed that part of it. The next one is Portrait of a Scotsman. Again, the obsession with men from Scotland. This one I did not like, which is funny because 3/4 of the book I really enjoyed, but the author, the last few chapters, completely 180'd the story, and I'm not sure why. And again, this is Hattie, I believe. This is her story, and she finds herself in a situation where she has to marry this Scotsman who, again, is not titled, very rough around the edges, very typical male written romance, like rough and beautiful and all those typical things you would see. But what I didn't like this is that I think she kind of ruins towards the end is that the idea that marriage is an institution that traps women, which again, you're welcome to your own opinions on this, but just like in this one, so you have, similar stories in here. They find themselves in situations, they have to marry men, they don't want to get married. But what I like about this one is that the situation is she didn't want to marry and lose all of her rights and her property. So her husband, to be, finds a way for her to maintain her property and be an individual outside of marriage. Well, this one, it's marriage is an institution that takes everything away, so why bother with it? And she ends up, leaving. I think it was taken the wrong way, because I do think marriage is a leap of faith. No matter what you take, you are entering into a partnership with a person and trusting that they will have their best interest and your best interest and really care about you. And I feel like this one squashed that idea, that there wasn't enough trust between him to allow that faith that would happen. Well, in this one, it was. So I kind of like that version better, but this is the one I did not like. So enough. Well, I was going to say enough with romance, but I lied, because I'm going to continue. This is all romance. So for June, Pride Month, I do try to read different LGBTQ plus friendly books, try to get perspective. So I picked this up. This is They Hate Each Other. It was an interesting book. So again, Jonah and, what's the other guys? Dylan, I believe. Yes, Jonah and Dylan. They're in the same friend group. They hate each other. They've always hated each other. And their friends are always telling them that they should date and just get it over with. So they eventually decide to date or pretend date to get their friends off their back. And slowly over the course of the time, you learn more about each character and why they hate each other and kind of their story. So it was an interesting read. It was very modern, compared to these books, which were, it's not that old. I think these were in the 2015, so maybe 10-ish years old. These are obviously newer, more updated, looking for a younger crowd type situation. So again, I like learning the perspectives, learning the characters, and their stories behind it. I think that is really helpful to understand. So there's that one. Next is Last Night at the Telegraph Club. Again, I really enjoyed this book. It is one we are doing for my book club for Pride Month specifically. Gives you a little description here about it. This takes place in 1954, Chinatown, which again, historically, I think this would be a good book to interweave when you're talking about Chinese immigration to the United States, things like that, because that does come up here, that Lily is questioning her sexual identity. She believes that she's attracted to women, and what that's like in 1954, I think, is a really interesting perspective, especially with the culture she is growing into and how that's not allowed, and how she kind of navigates finding her own identity within this. So I did really enjoy this book. I think it's a quick read. I think it's really good historically. I think it's really good perspective-wise, and even in the back it does give some further information, which I really appreciate. So I could definitely see this being transitioned into your curriculum as well. And I'll have to say, a lot of the stories are, at least same gender couples, are men and men, so it was nice to read about a lesbian couple as well. I don't feel like there's as many of those books as, gay men. But this was really good. I really highly suggest that one. I like the historical part of it as well. So last one I read was Felix Ever After. Again, I did not like this book. I think I'm just too old for it. I'm nearing 40 now. And it's funny because throughout the book, there is exchanges. So when you're reading like Jane Austen, she uses letters between characters to kind of flesh out the characters and the dialogue and all those things. And here it was text messages. It's just, I don't know, I'm not a big fan of that way of conveying information, and I get it's a more modern approach in writing, but I was just like, oh, this is kind of, no. I didn't like that aspect. So this is about Felix, who is transgender. He's also black, and he talks about how it's really difficult for him because he's in such a marginalized group to find love. He's never found love. He wants to find love. So he goes to this art school, and in the art school, someone kind of dead names him, which means they reveal his identity, who he was before he transitioned. And to get revenge, he starts catfishing the person he thought did it, pretending to be someone else. And again, those are where the text messages go back and forth. And slowly throughout the story, they kind of fall for each other. But at the same time, Felix's best friend, Ezra, is also developing feelings for him. And again, the part I didn't like is I didn't really like who he ended up with at the end. I wanted him to end up with the other person. But it's a good story, and I really do think it is helpful, especially to understand different perspective. And the author talks about that as well. To really, because I am not the person, that's not the perspective I understand. So the more I can read and understand and try to see things from different perspectives, the better idea I have. I will never understand what it's like to be trans. I will never understand what it's like to be black. I will never understand what it's like to be queer. But that doesn't mean I can't learn about it. I can't try to understand it better. So I do think that did a really good part, especially since his mom in here kind of leaves him and never talks to him again. His dad is really supportive but still struggles with the transition. These family dynamics and really identity, I think this would be really good for, you know, a young adult or a teenager trying to figure out their identity. This would be really helpful because it talks about how that's a struggle and figuring out who you are and labels and how difficult labels can be sometimes. So I think there's a lot of really good themes in here, but overall I was just really disappointed that he chose the one person over the other, but I won't spoil the ending for you and who he chooses. But again, I think these are really good books to read during Pride Month to get a better perspective. And I have the 3 more books that I'm going to be reading before June is over, but that is everything so far. So that is everything I've read for the month of June. And it's funny, out of the 14 books, only 2 of them weren't romance. And I didn't really notice that until I made this video, that, you know, 12 of them were all romance books. But I guess that's what I am into. But I'm trying different things within the romance, more modern, more diverse type of literature, but also some more classical romance books as well. So if you have any specific questions about any of the books I mentioned, let me know in the comments down below. If not, thank you for watching.